I'm Lynn, and this is Healing in Balance, and this is a freebie, a little taste of what we'll be doing in this Patreon. You can see if you wanted to subscribe. This will be a short class. It'll use some of the poses that I often teach and some of the instructions that I use. As we move along, this library of classes that will start to be available to you. If you subscribe, you can re-watch them, practice them anytime you want. You'll have access to the whole library. But we're starting with this one little freebie. If you have them, we use a couple yoga blocks in this practice. These happen to be 4 inches thick instead of 3 inches thick. It's okay with whatever you have. These are also lightweight. If you haven't got blocks and you decide you're going to purchase them, the heavier cork or wood blocks are sometimes not useful in my classes. So I recommend the foam blocks. All right. Have a space that you can lie down on as well as stand and spread out. And we're going to start in Tadasana, mountain pose. I like to plant the feet right under the hip joints. That's not as wide as the outside edges of my hips. That's usually about 4 to 6 inches apart. Having said that, you might choose a little wider or narrower based on your familiarity in your body, your comfort. We're also going to shift a little bit more weight onto the heels, toes pointed forward. As you shift that weight onto the heels, you shouldn't be so far back that you're falling. You're just a little bit back from where you usually stand. And the feet press into the floor. As the feet press into the floor, feel a lift in your spine, and we'll start to move the arms. Inhaling and exhaling. Now, at other times, we'll play with the breath and we'll do different arm movements, but for today, we're just going to keep it simple. Inhale, take the arms out and up. Move at your breathing pace. Exhale, take the arms down. Take one more of these. Feel your lungs filling and emptying, and try and keep the breath at that pace. We're going to take Uttanasana, forward fold. Again, moving with the breath. Repetitions of this pose will go down on the breath and come up on the breath. So as you fold forward, exhale down, inhale up. If you find you're not breathing in the order I'm suggesting, cool. We'll talk about that further in other classes. You'll notice I'm hinging forward. You are welcome to round over and round up, but I find a lot of us have very tight hamstrings, and getting that pelvis to tip forward starts to get a little more into the back of the legs. It also lengthens the pelvic floor, which is good for a variety of health reasons. The next time we're over, we're going to stay over. Go ahead and keep your hands at your hips or alongside your torso. I want you to again shift weight onto those heels. Make sure you're not holding on by your toes. Your weight's more in your heels, and then we still press the feet into the floor. If your legs are straight with your knees locked back, I want you to bend your knees and get your knees over your ankles, but we're not going to stay there. We're going to keep those knees over the ankles and imagine the tailbone and the hamstrings lifting toward the ceiling. You might not get fully straight legs, but you will be much more actively engaging the hamstrings. Find your breath here. Make sure you're still breathing slowly and steadily. And we'll come all the way up. We'll go over one more time and hold Uttanasana. Again, weight in the heels, knees over ankles. The heels press down and the tailbone and hamstrings lift up. And we'll come all the way up to standing. We're going to lift one heel and then lift the other heel. Now, as I do this, I'm keeping the ball of my foot on the ground, and I'm loading my toe joints, stretching the bottom of my foot, gently loading my ankle, knee, and hip, just getting those feet moving a little bit. And once more, we'll plant those feet. Check in and see if your body feels a little different, if something hurts, if you feel relaxed, if you feel agitated. If you're on a mat, you'll turn sideways so that you're facing the long side of your mat. Again, make your toes point forward, shift a little bit of weight into your heels and press the feet into the floor. Prasarita Padottanasana, wide forward fold. We head over now. If you don't go over very far, great. If you want to put your hands on something but you don't reach the floor, this is a good place to use blocks, or perhaps your hands come to the floor. But just as we did in Uttanasana, we're going to bend the knee a little bit. Press the heel down, lift the tailbone up, and find your breathing here. When I say find your breathing, that doesn't mean you're forcing it to do anything particular, but you are trying to see, is it slow and steady? Are you able to breathe smoothly in this position? And come all the way up to standing. We're going to take one foot and turn the toes out to point to the short edge of your mat. If you're not on a mat, 90-degree turn. I'm going to scoot my back heel toward the short edge of my mat also, just a little bit though, so it slightly turns my leg in. I'm still roughly facing the long side of my mat. Inhale, exhale. We bend the front knee. We're going to bring the arms bent, palms up for today. As we work in this pose and hold this, Virabhadrasana, Warrior 2, Side Warrior, lots of names for this. Press your heels into the ground, add the balls of the feet and the toes, lift up through your spine. Is it okay if you turn your head to look over your front shoulder, the same shoulder as bent leg? What's the breathing like here? And we'll straighten the knee, bring your arms down, and right where you are, you'll just turn your feet the other way. So again, I've got one foot pointing to the short edge of the mat, 90-degree turn, back heel scoots out just a little. And again, we breathe and we bend the front knee, and we'll have bent arms, palms up. We press the feet into the floor, heels, balls of the feet, toes. We lift up through the spine. We turn the head to look over the front shoulder. If any of that isn't okay, guess what? Don't do that instruction. We press into the feet, we lift through the head, we try and breathe here, or we observe what's happening in the breath. And we'll come up. We're going to go back to the first side, round 2. Same pose, Virabhadrasana B, and we bend the front knee. This time we press the feet into the floor, heels, balls of the feet, toes. We lift up through the head. And we're going to add one more instruction to use more muscle instead of collapsing in joints. We're going to think of squeezing the feet, the thighs toward each other and wake up some inner leg muscles, and your glutes might suddenly fire. If they don't, that's okay, but they might. Keep breathing here. And we'll come up. Again, we'll switch sides. Toes point to the short edge of the mat. Back heel turns out a little bit. We bend the front knee. We press the heels, balls of the feet, toes into the floor. We lift up through the spine, turn the head, and then we think about squeezing those legs, those feet toward each other. We want to use more muscle and less joint. We want the muscles to support the skeleton here. And we'll come up. Make the feet parallel, toes pointing forward. Wide forward fold, Prasarita Padottanasana. We head on over. Is it different? We're a little warmer now. We get weight in the heels, knees line up with those ankles, and again, we don't want to just sit there and collapse into those knees. We're going to press the heels down and lift the tailbone up, lengthening the back of the leg, lengthening in 2 directions, down and up. Taking one more breath here. And we'll come all the way up to standing. We're going to come back to Tadasana and just check in. Shift a little weight on your heels, press your feet into the floor. How do you feel right now? Taller, shorter, cranky, something hurts, something feels better. When you check in, it's okay to simply notice, I like how I feel, I don't like how I feel. I don't notice any difference. I just want you to see if there are poses that have an impact after you're done. We're going to do one last round, working inside warrior. So we take that wide stance, we turn one foot out, the back heel scooches out a little bit, and again we bend the front knee, but this time we're going to bring the hands right to the crease of your hip and thigh. So I'm right at that crease. I'm again going to press my feet into the floor and squeeze them toward each other. I'm going to lift up through my spine, but now I'm going to go from Virabhadrasana, from side warrior, into Utthita Parshvakonasana, side extension, and I'm going to move back and forth. Again, repetition with the movement first. As you're moving, can you connect your breath to this? Maybe it's exhale, sideways, inhale, up. But also as you're moving, can you notice, does your pelvis come toward your hand and then away from your hand? We want to move from the pelvis and not just curve the spine. So the next time we're tipped over to the side, we'll stay there. We're going to reconnect with those feet, pressing them into the floor. Make sure you're facing more toward a wall than toward the floor. So if you need to, a little bit of twist in the rib cage. We'll split the arms open. The front arm goes to the outside of your thigh. It does not rest here. I know the legs are going to get tired. Back arm could be out or up or even over the ear. I'm going to go for up. Reach through your fingers, reach into your feet. Do you want to turn your head? If so, do you turn up to look at the top hand? Do you turn down to look at your foot? Do you not turn your head? These are all possibilities. And we'll bring the torso upright first and then come up out of the legs, and we'll switch sides. So these poses are supposed to use leg muscles. If you've never gotten tired in them before, you've probably been collapsed into joints or locking the joints to hold yourself there. So if you find that with these instructions, your legs are shaking or you need to come out of it sooner, that's fine. You're slowly building your endurance. You come out when you need to. 1 foot 90 degrees to the back edge, back heel scoots out a little bit. And again, we're going to bend the front knee, arms out of the way at the crease. We press the feet into the floor. We squeeze the legs toward each other. We lift up. Those instructions might go out the window as you start moving. And again, we're going to tip sideways and come upright. So we're moving into side extension, Utthita Parshvakonasana, back to Virabhadrasana, warrior. Trying to connect the breath to it, or at least make sure you're breathing. If this is all new to you, you might not even be breathing, so just breathe. Can you bring your pelvis towards your hand and away from your hand? Does it move? It might be stuck. Took a long time for mine to move. I did a lot of curving before I could actually move at this joint. We're going to come over to the side and hold. So we stay in Utthita Parshvakonasana. We press into the feet. We might take a little bit of twist to make the torso face a wall instead of a floor. Front arm reaches down to the floor to the outside of your front leg. Back arm goes out or up or even over the head. And again, I'm just going to reach up today. That feels right. Press through your feet. Reach through your fingers. Turn your head if you like. Do you turn it up? Do you turn it down? Are you breathing? Always a good question. And we'll bring the torso upright first, then come up out of the legs. Parallel feet, our last Prasarita Padottanasana, wide forward fold. How is this changing? Is it changing? Is it easier to get your feet to connect to the floor? Is it easier to lift up? Or maybe you're able to lift up more because your muscles are warmer. Are you able to breathe here? Has the shape of your pose changed? Lots of ways the pose could change, and we just want to observe the changes. Come all the way up to standing, come back to mountain, Tadasana. Feet parallel, shift a little weight on your heels, connect the feet to the floor. Is there lift already? Maybe you don't even have to think of lift. Maybe your spine feels floaty and spacious. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe you feel really heavy and concrete, connected to the ground. We want to have both present, this groundedness and this lift. So I don't do graceful transitions. I don't give a shit how you get places. I want you to get places safely. I also want you to not do poses that hurt. We're going to move to all fours, and you're going to grab one of your blocks. Now I'm going to turn around so you can see the width. I refer to the blocks in different heights. So this is candy box height, boom box height, tower height. So we're going to go candy box height, 6 inches wide. And you're going to put it between your feet so that, then again, I said I would turn, so that I'm not just doing this back there and not knowing what's going on. I want to hug the block, and then my feet are going straight back from my knees. My hands are not in front of my thighs. In fact, if you let your hands be by your side and slide them forward, that's shoulder width. Might be out close to the edge of your mat. If you're broad shouldered, might be slightly off your mat. That's fine. We're not working toward a flat back. In fact, we want to let a little bit of lumbar curve, not the most, just a little bit of lumbar curve be present. Press your palms into the floor, reach your head and your tailbone away from each other. We take one leg, we extend it back, foot presses into an imaginary wall. Opposite arm, if you like, reaches forward. And we hold here and we breathe. Are you breathing? Is your breath steady? Is your body steady? This might be very wobbly. And we come down. Second side, the other leg extends back. Press your foot into an imaginary wall. Reach your arm forward. Opposite arm and leg. And we check in on the breath once more. First question is always, are you breathing? When you're working on new things, it's really common to hold your breath. Don't worry about that so much. But if you're holding your breath, start to find ways to breathe. And come down. So I know it's normal to hold your breath when it's new. I just want to bring your attention to it once you've been there for a bit. We're going to take the first side one more time, but instead of reaching the arm forward, we're going to take the arm out to the side. I want you to reach through your fingers, reach through your foot, and I want you to press into the floor through your knee and hand. Does that wake up the front of your torso a little bit? And we'll come down. Take the second side, leg extends back, pressing into an imaginary wall. Opposite arm goes out to the side. We're not going for height, we're going for parallel to the ground at best. Reach through your hand and foot, press into the floor through the base of your pose. Hand, knee, foot. Check and see, are you taking breaths at all? If you are they steady? And come down. Curl your toes under. We're going to take downward facing dog. So I have my toes curled under. I actually want to see if I can do this without just adjusting my hands and feet, but it is possible you get up there and want to take your hands further apart from your legs. We're going to lift the pelvis up, knees come off the floor. So the pelvis is lifting toward the ceiling while the hands and the toes and the balls of the feet push into the floor. I'm not so worried about heels down. Don't move your hands closer to your feet to get your heels down. The heels will come down as you get more mobility in the back of your legs. And just like our forward folds, Uttanasana and Prasaripottanasana, we want to think of the tailbone and the heel lifting away from each other. Bring your knees down. Come up off your hands to kneeling mountain. We still have the block. We're going to hug the block with the inside edges of the feet. We're going to squeeze the thighs in toward each other and also press those thigh bones forward slightly. Think of lifting up through the front of the pelvis without arching backward. So this is kneeling mountain. I don't have a Sanskrit name for that. And we breathe here and we take the arms out and up and out and back down. And we do that one more time. There are lots of poses we'll do from this position, but not today. I just want you to become familiar with this. Something to check out. As you hug the block with your feet, do your toes relax or do they curl up or do they press into the floor? Just notice. You don't have to change anything. And then we're going to come back down to table, palms on the floor, a little bit of lumbar curve, and we're going to come to incline. Now, incline could be done on your feet or on your knees. But you want to press your palms into the ground, reach back through your heels and forward through your head, and find your breath here. And you'll notice your breath is probably more compromised here. And so what constitutes slow and steady will not be as slow and steady as, for example, downward dog. Bring your knees down. Keep your block between your feet. We're going to come onto our stomachs and work in prone mountain. Lots of mountain poses. So as I take this pose, my head is not resting on the floor, nor are my shoulders. I'm hugging the block with my feet and trying to squeeze my thighs toward each other. I could also try and press my feet and thighs into the ground. My hands are reaching back toward my feet. My shoulder blades pull onto my back. So I really try and pull them toward each other without lifting my chest higher. So chest stays low. I'm looking at the floor once I know what this pose looks like. I'm reaching my head and my feet away from each other. And I'm noticing it is not that easy to breathe slowly here. This simple looking pose uses a lot of muscles that constrict your lung movement. Go ahead and bring your arms under your head. Rest your forehead or the side of your head on your arms. Let your legs completely relax. And as you inhale and exhale now, feel how much more ease there is in movement through your torso. Feel how deeply you can fill your lungs and empty them. We're going to leave the head resting, and we're going to bring the feet to the block again. We want to wake those legs up by either hugging your thighs toward each other, pressing them into the floor, hugging the feet into the block, or pressing the feet into the floor. Do one or two of those. Don't try and do everything. We're going to lift one straight leg up and lower it, and lift the other leg straight up and lower. I'm trying to keep my pelvis on the floor, so this movement isn't really big as I work toward hip extension. My thigh moving off the floor if possible, without my pelvis moving. Take one more with each leg. And walk your toes under your shins. Push back through your heels so your knees straighten up off the floor. If this feels like it's dumping into your lower back, you could gently press your pubic bone toward the floor. So there's some effort in the lower body. Can the upper body relax while the lower body is functioning? We'll come onto the tops of the feet, press up onto your forearms, working in Sphinx. This is what I call a dome. We're changing the shape of the thoracic part of your spine. That's the area of your spine that runs the length of your rib cage. We're also trying to come into hip extension. So this isn't about crunching your lower back. So we start by picturing the top of the pelvis where it meets the floor and seeing if you can draw the top of the pelvis away from the floor. It may or may not lift up, but now you're coming into hip extension. And at the same time, we want to draw the shoulders back and open the chest and think collarbones lifting up as though your rib cage is spreading out in front. And you can't do 100% of rib cage spreading out and pelvis lifting. You have to find a combination of effort there so that you don't just crunch into the lower back. We don't want the belly pressing into the floor to make this shape. We can use the arms and legs to help support us. So what happens if you press your forearms and hands into the floor? What happens if you press your feet and thighs into the floor? Check back in on that pelvis and on the shoulders. We'll take one more breath here. And we'll come on down, and one more time, we'll just let everything relax. Legs relax. Lungs fill and empty. You can feel the spine move. You can feel the sides of your body moving, your rib cage. You might even feel the back of your pelvis moving with your breath. So we're going to press up to table from there, and we're going to make our way to Supine Mountain. You won't need a block at the moment, but have your blocks within reach because we will use them in just a bit. So Supine Mountain, I'm lying down on my back. It's another mountain pose. I want to think about Tadasana when we're up on our feet. So I want my feet roughly that same hip joint distance apart. I want my feet flexed like I'm standing. I'm going to press the backs of my heels into the floor and keep them on the floor. And then I'm going to try and press my thigh bones toward the floor. They may or may not get there. And as I do that, I might feel my glutes fire a little bit. I certainly felt my lower abdominal muscles start to kick in. I didn't try and make them do it. I just pressed my heels into the floor and my thighs toward the floor. Toward is important, not to, toward. You might get there. A lot of people won't. And then at the same time, I have this little lumbar curve in my back. I want to keep it. I don't want to press my back flat to the floor, but I also don't want that curve to go way up into my rib cage and upper back. So I'm going to pull my lower ribs toward the floor and my shoulders toward the floor. And much like in Sphinx, I can't do 100% of each of those. If I do too much ribs, I flatten the back, I lose the thighs, the shoulders curve up. If I do too much shoulders, my ribs will fly again. So it's a combination of lower ribs, shoulders toward the floor, thighs toward the floor, heels on the floor, arms wherever you like them. This is plenty of work, Supine Mountain, Supta Tadasana, but we're going to try and lift one leg and lower it, and lift the other leg and lower it. And we're doing this with as little movement in the torso as we can manage. Now I'm going about maybe 45 degrees, 50 degrees away from the floor. my lower back's been bothering me. So I'm not taking my leg super high. I'm taking my leg where I can control it and where it doesn't bother my back. I want to keep both legs straight. I haven't told you to breathe, so let's see. Are you breathing? When are you breathing? Are you inhaling to lift your leg? Are you exhaling to lift your leg? One part of the breath to lift, one part to lower. We'll take each leg one more time. And then we're going to bend the knees and put the feet flat. And this is where you're going to grab your blocks. One block is going to go candy box height, 6 inches wide between your feet. The other block is going to be boombox height and 4 inches wide between your knees. Bent legs, feet close to your butt, arms bent at the elbow. We press the shoulders and upper arms into the floor. We press the feet into the floor. We're going to lift up into a bridge. Pelvis comes off the floor. So does the belly and the rib cage. And we come back down. So repetition with the breath. We lift and lower. We do want the rib cage to lift up. We don't want to just lift the belly and the pelvis. We want to get the whole thing to lift up. We're trying for a straight line from shoulders to knees, but gravity's not your friend in this pose. So we'll come up one more time and hold. Press the shoulders and upper arms into the floor. Really use them. Press your feet into the floor. See if that allows you to lift the pelvis and thighs a little higher. And we'll come down. We're going to remove the blocks. We're going to take the legs with the feet. They could be separated, they could be together, but the feet are flat on the floor. We're going to take the legs and let them drop from one side to the other. Windshield wiperasana. Yeah, that's crappy Sanskrit. This is just one of those movements that's made its way into a lot of yoga classes, so no real Sanskrit name for this. We're going to take an active twist, and then we're going to take rest. So the active twist, you're going to grab one of your blocks again. You're going to put it between your knees. And you're going to start with your arms out to the side on the floor and pick your legs up, bent legs. So one of the tricky parts here is the feet are going to want to come together. Try not to let the feet touch. I want to keep my shoulders on the floor and tip my pelvis and legs over to one side as far as I can go and still recover and come back. And then I go to the other side. And as I'm doing this, I could exhale over because I'm moving into the twist and inhale back up, or I could inhale over and exhale back up because that's where the effort is. So lots of reasons why you might breathe the way you breathe. We'll take one more to each side, and then we're going to make this more fun. And whenever you hear me say fun, you should hear a little sarcasm there. We're going to take the arms up. They're off the floor. We still are going to try to keep the arms and the shoulders from moving. But we're going to take that same movement. You're going to discover how much your arms were helping so that you don't fall. We still want to tip over to the side and come back to center. The movement for many of us will be much smaller when the arms are not on the floor providing leverage. And again, are you able to use your breath to help you? Can you keep your feet from touching? One more to each side. And then we'll remove the block. Now, some of you may want to hug your knees to your chest. That's great. For my body, my lower back is not real happy with that these days. You could hug one knee and stretch the other one out and then switch. That's a possibility. You could go back to windshield wipers. That's in fact what I'm going to do. So you have options. You don't have to be doing what I'm doing. This is what I would consider recuperative playtime. That's a lot of hip flexor work, what we just did. A lower back can be talking to you. So we want to do what we need to relax and create some ease in the hard working areas. So we'll always do a twist before we take rest, almost forever in this class. There will be different twists every week. If you like that one, I consider that an active twist. It is work. We'll also do some passive twists in some of the other classes. But then we take rest. So Generally in a yoga class, Shavasana looks like this, and this is what is taught. But this is hard on some people's backs or hips or head or shoulders. You could have the legs bent, knees touching. You could have the legs bent with a block between your legs so your legs don't have to come in quite so far, but they rest. You could have the soles of the feet together with the knees out to the side. This is another place where you could use blocks to support the legs. You could lie on your side. You could sit up with your back to a wall. I think I'm going to rest here. This is Supta Baddha Konasana. Baddha Konasana for the legs, Supta meaning supine. And then you place your hands where you like. You've positioned your body how you want. If it's okay, you can close your eyes. I want you to feel the weight of your body on the floor. See if you can let those exhales make your body weightier. Make the bones heavy towards the earth. Make the muscles relax. And then each inhale is creating space and lightness between the bones, around the organs. If you find you've chosen a resting pose and after a bit it's no longer comfortable, by all means you should change the resting pose. As you lie here or sit, whatever pose you've chosen, if you start to notice tension arising in body parts, you could rearrange a little as needed. You could tense and relax that area. You could just observe, wow, that's tight. I can't seem to do anything about it. Sometimes during rest, I might read to you. I might let it be completely silent. I might offer you a meditative practice. Today, simply allow for that weightiness that comes with your exhale and that lift and lightness that comes with the inhale. Bring your attention to your lungs. I want you to fill them completely and empty them completely. Nice slow breath, and then notice what body parts move in coordination with that filling and emptying of the lungs. Do you feel your ribs expand? Do you feel your belly or sides move? Do you feel your chest moving? What other parts are involved? And then slowly you'll add movement to the rest of your body, not just the breath and the torso, but maybe circling your hands at the wrists or spreading your fingers wide and making fists. You might extend your legs long if they've been bent. You might bend them if they've been straight. So the movements could be in small parts like fingers and toes, could be big parts. You might even take a big stretch. It's up to you. Move the parts that you really need to move before we come out of our rest. Move the parts you want to move. And then when you're ready, we're going to bend the knees. And for today, let's all roll over onto one side. You can put your arm under your head if you like. Take a breath or two here. And then use your hand on the floor to help push you upright. So I'm going to teach you one of my favorite seated positions. It's not sitting cross-legged or just lifting your pelvis a little bit on a blanket. You can take your blocks if you have them, And you can put your 2 blocks, stacking one on top of the other between your feet, and then sit on that. Now, if your knees or ankles don't like this, this is not a happy pose for you. But I want you to find something that's upright, whether you sit cross-legged, whether you stand up all the way onto your feet, whether you come to this seated/kneeling position. And then I want you to drop weight into the floor. Feel whatever is supporting you and drop some weight down into that. And then feel your spine lifting, floating upward away from that. Inhale and exhale here, filling and emptying the lungs, feeling what moves here. Your shoulders are free to move when you're not lying down. Do they move? Can you feel more movement in the back of your body? If you wish to, bring your hands into a prayer position. We'll draw the chin in. I still have this feeling of lift in my spine, so my chin in didn't slump me forward. I still lift up the back of my body. And I breathe here and I find gratitude for the day, for the chance to move my body, to create a practice together here with me. I find gratitude for this community and the larger community, ourselves, and all these opportunities for learning that we call life. Thank you all for being here, and I hope you'll decide this is worth a subscription.